Is going on, everybody, and welcome to the Thursday edition of the Stochastic NHL Strategy Show. I'm your host, Josh Harris. Woo, we're starting with a bang. Completely lost my train of thought. Igor's back. There we are. We're back. He's looked good the past 5 or 6 games since he took that little break after the All-Star break to work with Benoit Allure, Allaire, the Rangers goalie coach. I think they have figured him out a little bit, which is good for the Rangers. The Oilers continue to be a tease. It'd be good for their results for DFS would be good for almost any other line, but not a 25,000 Edmonton one. Got a 12-gamer here tonight, though. I wish they took a couple of these games and played them yesterday, but, at this point in the season, what are we even complaining about? We're just yelling into a hallway about it. So, joining me, as always, ready for some Habs tonight. Some Cliffy. How we doing?
Doing good. A couple of lopsided games. I mentioned that in the picks article, which is free to read Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday over at stochastic.com/NHL. This is just the time of the year. Some playoff teams will kind of coast. It's always hard to kind of figure out when they're going to coast and when they're not, because obviously they don't take every single game off. Where teams that are way out of it kind of give up. Some of them do, some don't. I mean, remember last year, St. Louis and Nashville traded just about everything that wasn't nailed down, and they had some pretty big games over the final, 4 to 6 weeks of the season. So it's not everybody, and it's not all the time, but
so did the Hawks. They knocked out the Penguins.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that game literally changed NHL history for the next 20 years. So those things still happen. It's just unfortunate that the very last game to lock here tonight is between Anaheim and San Jose. It's nobody wants to see that, and it's just one of those games where you're probably going to see some goals, and you have to pay attention to it for DFS. There are going to be spots where you just don't have to pay attention to teams. We'll get to Columbus, Carolina in a little bit. Carolina can give up goals, but Columbus is a team that at this point you don't really have to pay that much attention to. There are some good players, there are some good lines, there are going to be good matchups, et cetera, et cetera. But it's, with the trade deadline a week away, it's just that time of year where, a quarter of the league is basically out of the playoffs. 12 or 13 of the playoff spots are basically locked up already. So you only have 10 teams in the league that have anything to play for, really. So it makes it kind of interesting. I also kind of like that in a way, because you could kind of go off the beaten path a little bit. You can go kind of target teams that don't really have a lot to play for, because people are thinking the same thing that I'm just saying right now, and might come in underweight on them on certain slates. It won't be tonight with Anaheim and San Jose. Those teams are going to be chalky, but it can help, and that's why I kind of like this time of year, even if a third of the league, or 2/3 of the league, doesn't really have much to play for.
Yeah, and unfortunately, you're right about having to pay attention to that game for DFS. Let me read you some teams who have lower totals than the Ducks and the Sharks here tonight. Los Angeles Kings, Pittsburgh Penguins, Winnipeg Jets, Dallas Stars, Buffalo Sabres, Arizona Coyotes, Vegas Golden Knights. The Ducks have a higher total than the Bruins tonight. Buckle up, folks. It's going to be a long night. Let's get into the slate. Before we do, just want to say thank you again for your support through the affiliate link signups and the super chats, and putting up with our shenanigans, mostly my shenanigans. Evil shenanigans. But thank you again for all your support. It's awesome to see both of us. I don't really want to put words in Cliffy's mouth, but both of us probably didn't think we would make it to this point in the season. But here we are. You guys' support has been great, and we truly appreciate it. So I guess I just did put words in his mouth. But anyway, let's get into this slate. Vegas Golden Knights with a 2.5 total. Heading into Boston, the Bruins have a 3 total. Couple of notes for the Bruins here. They moved Morgan Geekie to the top power play unit. and they mixed up their lines. They're going Pasternak, Marchand, Coyle, Zacha, DeBrusk, Van Riemsdyk, Kiki, Frederick, Heinen. Now, that's important for two reasons. One, you've talked about a lot. When Pasternak and Marchand are together, they just suck defensively. The other thing is, like, Vegas just kind of sucks. You know what I mean? Like, without Eichel, I know he's been skating, and I don't think he's playing tonight. Like, I kind of wanted to get behind some Vegas here, but they have a 2.5 total on the road. Their highest line with top two stack percentage is 1.4. It's just like, okay, like, I know that line isn't great defensively, and they take a bunch of penalties, so I guess, like, Karlsson and Marchessault is fine, or Stevenson and Mario is fine. Like, I don't want to prioritize Vegas here, despite it being a better matchup now that Pasternak and Marchand are together. Now, on the flip side, like, Vegas's penalty kill has gotten better than it had been recently. It's still not elite by any means. Like, I just don't love these Boston lines. Like, Coyle, Marchand, Pasternak are fine. It's fine, right? I'd rather play that line than a line with Pavel Zacha on it. So if anything, it would be Boston 1 for me. They're coming in half. Their ownership percentage is half their top two stack percentage, but they're 21,000 to full stack, right? And it's hard to prioritize them in single entry when you have Florida 1, when you have Tampa 1, when you have Minnesota 1, you have Colorado 1, you have Toronto 1, Detroit 1, all in the same price range. You know what I mean? So, like, I think Boston 1 is fine in MME. I just don't know if I want to prioritize anything in this game. And it's a 5.5 total, and there's a lot of big totals on this slate.
Yeah, I think one of the reasons, like, I don't have any real interest in Vegas. Like, if you want to one off William Karlsson or Marchessault or something like that, I think that's fine. But I don't have any interest in stacking them, at least not until they get healthier. The Boston side, the one thing that's really kind of stopping me from getting excited about Boston is that Vegas just does not take penalties. Even if their penalty kill wasn't improving, which it has been, it was like bottom 5, bottom 6 in the league for a couple months there. If you look basically like the last 8 weeks, 7-8 weeks, they're more the middle of the pack. They don't need to be a penalty kill that's better than middle of the pack when you take as few penalties as they do. Their last 20 games, they're at 2.3 minor penalties taken per game. The league average is 3.5, and no other team is below 2.8. They're at 2.3. Like, they're just not taking penalties. And, David Pasternak can certainly have a big game at 5-on-5. He can do that in any matchup, regardless of how many penalties the opponent takes. It's a question of whether can a $21,000 line get there all at 5-on-5, and theoretically they can. But do I want to go use this line at 21K on DraftKings? We'll talk about Florida in the next game when Florida is only $800 more expensive and the ownership is not that much higher. Toronto is cheaper and the ownership is not that much higher. I think there are just other spots that you can go to full stack. Like 42% of Brad Marchand's points this season have come on the power play. Like, he has gotten a lot of his production with the man advantage. So where Vegas isn't taking penalties, the penalty kill has been getting better. Maybe they're not great at 5-on-5. But for a $21,000 line to pay off, like, you probably need 60 DK points from them. It means you probably need at least 3 goals from them, assuming like Coyle and Marchand don't get shot bonuses and all that. So I don't know. I just don't think I have a lot of interest in full out stacking any players from this game. Like I said, one off Marchessault or Karlsson or anything like that, I think that's fine. If you want one off, David Pasternak is fine as a one off on any slate. If you want to use Jake DeBrusk, I think he's fine. Like, he had been getting some power play time recently, so whatever few power plays they do get, he'll be there. But honestly, other than that, like, there's just no interest in stacking. So I think, considering the 5.5 total and all that, like, especially in a single entry, I'm just going to pass.
Yeah, I agree. It's just like I like Charlie Coyle, but him being on the top line and it being 21,000, just me. Let's get to a real game, shall we? Montreal Canadiens with a 2.3 total. Holy moly, my eyes are watering. Heading into Florida, the Panthers have a 3.8 total. We're under the assumption that Carter Verhaeghe is going to be playing tonight. I haven't seen anything otherwise to suspect that he's out. Obviously, just don't blindly stack Florida 1 and not check during warmups, but like we're assuming he's going to be in on the top line with Reinhart and Barkov. Second line of Tkachuk, Bennett, Cousins, Erod, Lundell, E2D2, Luosterainen. Third line, which is under 10K, by the way. If you're looking to jam in some power play stuff, that could be a filler that you could use. I'm not
just to cut you off for a sec. I was just looking at a preview from Jameson Olive, who writes for the official Florida Panthers website. He has and that came out about an hour ago. He has Verhaeghe in the projected lineup tonight, so it does look like he's fine.
That's good news. This is a very good matchup, both at 5-on-5 and on the power play. Now, Florida 1 is coming in 15.7% top two stack percentage, 7.6% projected ownership, positive leverage. They are $800 more expensive than Boston 1, and I would much rather play Florida here. They have a 3.9 total. They're fully correlated in a very good power play matchup. And Montreal takes a lot of penalties. And I was going to say Florida takes a lot of penalties too, but we'll get to that in a second. The second line of Tkachuk, Bennett, Cousins, very over-leveraged, 14% projected ownership. I get it because they are going to get the depth of Montreal, and if you've watched any Montreal game this season, once you get past the Suzuki line, it is a clown show defensively, unfortunately. They'll get better, but
I'm in fairness, and we'll talk about it, but Newhook, Roy, and Armia have been probably the team's best second line since Kirby Dach got hurt, and they've been legitimately good.
Yes, but you get into that second pair of Montreal on the blue line, and it's just it is what it is. They're rebuilding. They have a very good first line. They're going to have a very good second line when Dach is healthy. You know what I mean? It's coming, not tonight. Now, I don't know if I would stack Florida 2 here at that ownership with Nick Cousins. Like, we'll get to it at the end, but like, if someone asked me, would you rather play Nick Cousins at 14% or Mikael Granlund at 12%? I think I would rather just commit seppuku. Like, I don't want to do either. But Tkachuk is on the top power play unit, right? And if you are thinking about power play stacking, you have to have Tkachuk in there. He is the little engine that could. Now his shooting rates are down, whatever. Cliff, you mentioned it on the last show. Sam Reinhart was on a heater like a month ago. He was shooting 28%. If you only want to have 3 guys on the power play stack, I think leaving off Reinhart is okay for Tkachuk. He's just not shooting anymore. Like, the shooting percentage came down and he stopped shooting. Now, that could change tonight. But based off his recent performance, he hasn't been shooting. You want to go the 4-man stack? I think that's fine. 5-man stack, it's going to get expensive. But there are ways to combat that. The third line is fine as a filler in some really expensive power play stuff. They're a little bit negative leverage, but any line under 10K is going to be negatively leveraged. On the Montreal side, there is no ownership on the top line, 0.4% projected. They are 18-3, which is a tad expensive for a road matchup in Florida. The only thing I will say about it is it's a brutal 5-on-5 matchup, but the Florida Panthers take a boatload of penalties. So if you happen to get to Montreal 1 in your 20, like 1 of 20 or 150 max, you have like 1 or 2%, I think it's fine to leave because Florida takes 5 penalties tonight. They can still kill 4 of them. And, if Montreal cashes in on one of them, You get a shot bonus from Caulfield, something like that. I don't know how optimal that would be, but at 18-3, if they get, goal, 2 assists, a couple bonuses, they'll be perfectly fine for DFS. I'm not saying play them in single entry, but if you happen to get them in your MME portfolio, I think that is fine. But by far, favorite line, 4-1.
Yeah, this is a Florida game for me. We talk about batter versus pitcher in baseball. I mentioned that to you in a chat this morning. The last 10 games Florida and Montreal have played, Florida scored 60 goals, 6-0. 50 goals, 5 goals a game. Over the last 6 games, over the last 2 seasons, 36 goals or 6 goals a game. Like Florida is just one of those teams that just routinely beats Montreal's brains and has since the bubble season. That's not the reason why I like Florida 1 here tonight. The reason I like Florida 1 here tonight is because it is such a good power play matchup for the Panthers. Montreal, 3.8 minor penalties taken per game over the last 8 weeks. Not a surprise. It kind of coincides with the Arbor-Jack guys recall from the AHL. That's 6th most in the league. And Florida is drawing the most minor penalties in the league per game in that span. So you have one team drawing the most. You have another team, top 5 for this slate, taking the most. And Florida's power play has just been absolutely nuclear, basically since Brandon Montour returned. Now, I know Montour kind of caught off to a little bit of a slow start offensively, but he has 12 points in his last 6 games or something like that. Like it's just been absolutely ridiculous. So I really, really, really like the power play matchup here for Florida. I wrote about them in the picks article today, again, over at Stokastic.com. 3.2 expected goals, 3.4 actual goals per 60 minutes. It's the 64% expected goal share that's just kind of mind-blowing. Like that is complete and utter dominance. And this is a line that goes out against top lines all the time. And this is not a top line that you might see on other teams that goes against second and third lines. We talk about that with Carolina. This isn't that. This is a line that goes against the best every single night, and it's absolutely running everybody over. The Montreal top line has been getting better defensively. It's still not enough for me to worry about. So I love Florida 1 here. I wrote in the picks article, at the time, they were the lowest owned line, over 20K on the slate. Since we got the update on Boston, Boston's a little bit lower, but 7-8% on Florida 1 is fine. I agree with you. I would find a way to get Matt Tkachuk into the stack. Taking out Reinhart's fine. Taking out Carter Verhaeghe is fine, and putting Tkachuk in. But if you're stacking Florida's top line tonight, you're basically stacking the top power play. And if you do that, you got to get Matt Tkachuk in. Like I mentioned again in the article, because I wrote about Tkachuk, he's got 40 points, 40 points in calendar 2024. It's 3rd most in the league. He's just been absolutely incredible. And the only time these guys don't play heavy minutes, especially the top line, is when they're blowing out the other team. So I really do really like Florida 1 here. The other line I would consider is honestly Florida 3, and it's because I mentioned the Newhook Armia Roy line has generally been very good. Like Roy and Newhook actually had good defensive numbers with Josh Anderson there, and if you can have good defensive numbers with Josh Anderson, you can have good defensive numbers with anybody. And that's why I'm not super I wouldn't play Florida 2. It's just not that good of a 5-on-5 line. You only get one guy on the power play in a great power play matchup. But Florida 3, you get the guys on the second power play unit. If it is a blowout, maybe they start getting more ice time. And that third line has just been really, really good for the Panthers. 3.3 expected goals per 60 minutes in 100 minutes together. The bottom 6 for Montreal is as bad as you'll see in the NHL. I like Florida 3 as a filler stack. If you just wanted 2-man Rodriguez and Lundell, or Lundell and Luostarinen, something like that, I think that's fine. But Florida 1 is by far my favorite line in this game, and I don't have any interest in the Habs.
Yeah, and I see in chat, we'll ignore those, but we see in chat that some people are saying, they have a feeling about Reinhart. I'm just saying it's okay to take him off, but if you're stacking Florida 1, you put Reinhart in, right? You don't have to leave him off. I'm just saying, if you want to use 3 players on that line, you can use Tkachuk over Reinhart. or just adding Kachuk. You know what I mean? Reinhart's completely fine. Don't get me wrong. I got nothing against Reinhart. It's just, if you're looking for three guys, you're going to have to leave someone off that top line, right? And leaving Barkov off kind of feels bad. So it's between Verhaeghe and Reinhart. You just go off the last 10 games, a bigger sample, and Reinhart just hasn't been shooting. That's just the reason. But I think he's fine to leave. He is good. Carolina Hurricanes, they 3.9 total. Heading into Columbus, the Blue Jackets have a 2.6 total. Okay. It appears they're switching up the lines again in Carolina. The Stahl line is back together with Jesper Fast. That will maybe last a game or something. But it looks like it's going to be Aho, Svechnikov, Jarvis, Netchus, Bunting, Drury, then the Stahl line, then Teravainen down on the fourth line with Kotkaniemi and Nason, which actually has been a pretty good line when they've been together. That doesn't matter here tonight, right? So,
well, I got to jump in here. There's been no Carolina line since that game. There's been nothing from any practice. There's been no game preview updates. Daily Faceoff is going what was in there in the last game. I don't know why they have Aho and Svechnikov together if they're saying that they are breaking up the lines, because Aho and Svechnikov did not play together in the third period. That's what I was talking about in our Discord. Like it's a very big deal because this is a massive total. They broke up Aho and Svechnikov. We have no idea what the lines are going to be.
Yeah, Rod the Bod tends to get a little feisty sometimes, and it looks like tonight's going to be that night. Now, it's in Columbus. They're back-to-back. There's no matchup concerns, right? Like, that Jenner line actually has been good in calendar 2024. Offensively, defensively, it's still the Blue Jackets. It's a good power play spot for Carolina. If you think they're going to mix up the lines, like, what are they going to be? I don't know. You would hope that you get Aho with Jarvis, or you get Aho with Svechnikov, or you get Aho with Netchus, although Netchus probably not. You would hope Aho is going to be with at least one of Svechnikov or Jarvis, right? Because one, if Jarvis is there, Jarvis and Aho have great numbers together. Svechnikov and Aho have great numbers together. So unless it's something like Aho, Teravainen, who is it? Martinook, something like that, I'm probably going to have a lot of interest in Carolina 1. And if we don't know lines until warmups, that could be an advantage because they have a 3.9 total. It's going to be forget the goalie. It's not Mr. Lickens. It is whatever. It's the backup goalie. It's going to be a good matchup regardless of what the lines are. So I'm hoping you see something with Aho with at least Jarvis or at least Svechnikov. Or if it's Aho, Svechnikov, Jarvis, that's going to be a great line. You just jam them. You know what I mean? This is a situation where we could have new line combinations and warmups. People will only have a certain amount of time to adjust to them. It's the biggest total on the slate. It's a great power play spot. So it's hard to say exactly what I want to do if I don't know the lines, right? But it's going to be the Carolina top line if it's Aho and Jarvis or Aho and Svechnikov. Now, if Netchus and Bunting are together, I think they're fine as well. They've been playing very well together. So it's one of those things. It's a situation where you have to wait and see until warm-ups. Luckily, this skates at the locks at 7, so we'll know early. On the Columbus side, pass.
Yeah, I don't even know what to say about this game because I have no interest in Columbus. I think if I were to use anything, it might be the top line, the Jenner, Gaudreau, Roslovic line. They've actually been pretty good, 3.8 expected goals, 5.2 actual goals. I just don't think this is the right matchup for it. And we have literally no idea what the Carolina lines are going to be. All I will say is whatever line Sebastian Aho is centering is the line I have interest in. Almost like regardless who his wingers are. He's generally the guy that can drive goals above any other player on that team, which is one thing that they have a tough time doing, is not driving expected goals, but driving actual goals. He can do it. Just don't know what the lines are going to be. So all I'll say about this game is I have a lot of interest in whatever Aho's line ends up being in warm-up.
Yeah, same. New York Islanders with a 3.1 total heading into Detroit. The Red Wings have a 3.3. This is a game I'm interested in, and it's kind of a sneaky game. You know what I mean? Like, there's some big totals on this slate. There's not much ownership here. This is a good power play spot for both teams. I'm interested in both top lines here. Now the Detroit top line of Larkin, Kane, DeBrincat's down under 20,000 now. It was like, wasn't it? It was like almost 21,000 earlier this week, unless I'm losing my mind, which is certainly possible. I was sick this week. I'm still a little bit sick, but get Larkin on the top power play unit.
No, I know DeBrincat's price has come down quite a bit since the All-Star break. It's come down like $1,000 since the All-Star break, so that's probably it.
You see the DeBrincat goal the other night? That was a little tic-tac-toe. That's exactly what you were talking about in the article the other day, which is always free to read. So I don't know why you're not reading it. But I do really like Detroit one here. New York Islanders loading that top line, Barzal, Horvat, Nelson, is a bold strategy because those are their best three centers. Their depth is going to get run over, right? Palmieri, Leap, J.G. Pajot, Engvall, Zizekas, Holmstrom, McLean, Clutterbuck, Martin. Like, there's nothing there. It doesn't matter to me who Detroit one goes out against. Like, yeah, the Horvat, Barzal, Nelson line is going to be good offensively, but, you know, probably at best they're going to be trading chances. Islanders penalty kill is terrible. I wish Larkin, Kane, and DeBrincat were both on the same unit, but you get Kane and DeBrincat on the same unit. DeBrincat, Larkin and Kane, like Larkin and DeBrincat have excellent numbers together. So in on Detroit one, the Detroit second line was optimal the other night. Like, if you played them, congrats. Like, Cliffy's done a 180 on Lucas Raymond this season. He's having a very good season, but like, I'm just not going to full stack Raymond, Conf, for Rasmussen. Even if they, you know, have a really good 5-on-5 matchup, I'm fine with a Raymond one-off. I'm even fine with a Conf Raymond two-man in some stuff, but I don't want to full stack that line. In on Detroit one. New York Islanders won 19-5, 8.5% projected ownership. They're on the road. They're $200 cheaper than Detroit one. Detroit one coming in with 7% less ownership. You take ownership agnostic, I'd have a lot more interest in New York Islanders top line. You factor in ownership. It's hard to play New York Islanders top line at 8.5% when you can get to Detroit top line in a similarly good matchup for 1.5%. So I'm fine with both top lines, but in this scenario, I'll divert to the home team and the higher total and take the lower ownership of Detroit one.
So I think I'm on the other side here. I think I'm Islanders in this game. I wrote up Matt Barzal in the picks article, and with him and Bo Horvat on the top line, as long as it's anybody else but Simone Holmstrom, they're at 3.2 goals per 60 minutes of 5-on-5. Like, that's not elite or anything, but it's pretty good. The bigger point is their usage since Patrick Waugh took over. You mentioned it in the last show about Colorado, why they often make such a good play, because Nathan McKinnon will play like 25 minutes and Mikko Rantanen will play like 23 or 24 minutes and so on. It's been kind of the same thing with the Islanders. Matt Barzal is skating 22.51 per night since Patrick Waugh got there. Bo Horvat is not that far behind. Brock Nelson is not at the same level, but his last 4 games, 20 minutes, 21 minutes, over 21, over 22. These guys are getting a lot of usage. And like, I know Detroit has the higher total, but I'm thinking about the concentrated scoring here. It's like, if Detroit gets to, let's say, 5 goals here tonight, you know, pretty good chance that the top line is involved. But Daniel Sprong's been one of the most efficient scorers in the league this year. You have Lucas Raymond on the second line, who's been a point-per-game player for a month now. you have, the guys on the second power play unit, or guys on the fourth line that are on power play units. You have, Shane Gostisbehere scored 2 goals in the last game. Moritz Seider already has a career high in goals. Like, there are a lot of players that can score goals through this lineup. If the Islanders get to 5 goals, I'd be shocked if the top line wasn't heavily involved. Like, that's just kind of the point. And where you get so many minutes from a perfectly correlated line in a good matchup. Like, Detroit is not good defensively. They have a good goaltender. Like, it's actually kind of like the Islanders in that sense. And the Islanders have a great power play. They've had a great power play all year. And the bigger thing is they've been starting to draw a few more penalties. Still not a lot, still below average, but more. And Detroit's penalty kill is not very good. I think both top lines are very playable here. I understand wanting to play Detroit at 1% or whatever. The Islanders' top line is coming in 5th in the top stacks tool by top 2 percentage. It's higher than Toronto. It's higher than Boston. It's higher than Carolina, we just talked about. It's higher than Nashville, we'll get to later on the slate. Like, I just think where they're under $20,000, ownership is under 10%. The matchups are good at 5-on-5 and on the power play. They're perfectly correlated, getting a ton of minutes. I like Islanders 1 here. You mentioned that ownership. I'll bring up the top stacks tool just to kind of show it. It is 8.5%. That is high, but for a line that's under 20K, that's perfectly correlated. That's going to get as much ice time as they are, and Horvat and Barzal being as good as they've been this season. I really like the Islanders top line here. From the Detroit side, like, for all the reasons that you outlined, I think Detroit 1 certainly makes a really good play here. Other than that, I would probably just be picking one-offs from the depth. Like, I think one-off Lucas Raymond is certainly in play, even though he doesn't shoot a lot. He gets involved in a lot of the scoring. Like I said, there's guys on the fourth line that get involved for Detroit because of their power play usage, Daniel Sprong being among them, but Robbie Fabry also another one of those guys. So I think there are one-offs to pick from the Detroit depth. I think Detroit 1 very playable here, but it is the Islanders top line that I like best in this game.
You make a good point about the concentrated scoring, because after that top line, there just isn't anything there, and they still have a 3.1 total. So I will have to reassess my evaluation of this game, because I like it. I do like it. Not trying to sound raspy. I just am raspy. Sign up using the link in the chat to get access to the best NHL data and tools in the industry. You get player and ownership projections, the top stacks tools, line combinations, and access to the premium Discord, which you now need a membership for. Cliffy is going through the data that we show on the show. That's the data you'll get 24/7. What was I going to say? Oh, yeah. Cliffy's article, always free to read on Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Saturdays. Stochastic.com/NHL. Our show, obviously, always free. But you want to take the game to the next level, follow that link. Get in the premium Discord. Clayton will read you the rules. Something about moisturizing your hands. I don't know. I am not one to follow the rules, so. Arizona Coyotes with a 2.7 total heading into Toronto. Maple Leafs have a 3.9 total. Looks like Joseph Woll finally back for the Leafs. Timothy Liljegren still out. So the Leafs are going all lefties again. Can the Kings take notice that they're going all lefties? Los Angeles, hello. Yeah.
I mean, in fairness, the Leafs got their brains beaten in the last game when they did that. So,
tomato. Also, Samsonite was in net, and he's just putrid. So,
yeah.
Top line for the Leafs, 7.1% projected ownership. Second line for the Leafs, 11.6% projected ownership. Very good matchup, 5-on-5. Very good matchup on the power play. Leafs power play has been very good. I think full stacking, it's Toronto 1. I think, the second line, obviously fine. Like, Domi's fine. But I want to get as many power play guys into my lineup if I'm playing Toronto as I can. I think you leave Nyes off, Adam Bertuzzi, if you want to save a little bit of salary because he's still really cheap. Or if you want to make it really expensive, you add in the bee's knees, Willie Nylander. But I'm fine with full stacking Toronto 1. It's still an advantageous matchup at 5-on-5. Toronto 3 as a filler is a bit interesting. There's questions about Tavares' health. His agent denied it. Whatever. But like 12-6 for a line with Tavares, you can put it into your mix for filler lines. It is negatively leveraged, but you want to put it in your mix. That's fine. On the flip side, I mean, like, Keller out, it's just going to be right back to the Krause, Bukestad, Michelli line. And even then, like, I know I talk shit about the Leafs goalies all the time. I actually think Joseph Woll is pretty good. The blue line's still a mess. But I think for Arizona, it would be Krause, Bukestad, Michelli. I don't love the lines after that. So it would be that line for Arizona. And then Toronto, I like Toronto 1 in the power play stack.
Yeah, I think if I were to play Leafs here tonight, it'd be one of two things. It's the old Austin Matthews one-off, or just power play stacking the Leafs. And the reason power play stacking the Leafs actually, I mean, there's a couple reasons why it's not a bad idea. One, Arizona's taking a ton of penalties. This is a team that didn't take a lot at the start of the season, but basically since American Thanksgiving has really, really started the parade to the penalty box over the last 8 weeks alone. Second in the league in minor penalties taken per game. Their penalty kill is bad on top of that, and I think they've given up 18 power play goals in the last 21 games total. Toronto's power play, whether with Tavares or whether with Bertuzzi, has largely been really, really good. It's why I wrote up Austin Matthews in the picks article today. Matthews 4.9 goals per 60 on the power play. That is second in the league behind Sam Reinhart, 15 power play goals. He's already only one shy of a career high in power play goals, and it's still February. Like, this guy has been, to have the season he's having, you need to be really, really good on the power play. But with Tyler Bertuzzi taking Tavares' spot on the top unit, now you get a guy on a great top power play for Toronto who's only, 3,700 on DK. So you can stack Matthews, Nylander, and Bertuzzi or something like that. Matthews, Marner, and Bertuzzi, whatever you want to do. And it's not really that expensive, and it is a great power play matchup. It is the Toronto power play matchup, or Toronto power play stack that I like best here in this game. On the Arizona side, Krause, Bukestad, and Michelli is interesting to me. And it's interesting to me for a couple reasons. One, with Keller out, Michelli's on the top power play unit. It's one of those things where it's nice that he's getting the power play time. I also wonder how good the power play is actually going to be without Keller there. Like, that's kind of the problem. But the Toronto second line told me there, like we brought it up the other day, it is just not good defensively. It doesn't matter. Basically, every single line combination that Domi has been on this season, both 3 expected goals against per 60 or worse. That line in particular for Toronto is at 3.4. Small sample, but 72 shot attempts against per 60 minutes at 5-on-5. Nylander was on for 4 goals against in that Vegas game. Domi was on for 3. As good as they are offensively and as great of a power play matchup as it is for Toronto, that second line is garbage defensively. I don't think that going with 6 left-handed defensemen is going to help them any. Their hope is that Joseph Woll is in net and it's not Samsonov. I like Arizona too. They've been a lot better of late for the last 8 weeks. 2.8 expected goals for per 60, 2.1 against. Michelli on the top unit, the other 2 guys on the second. Lawson Krause, 29 shots in his last 10 games. He's already reached 20 goals for the season. I don't mind Arizona 2 as a filler, and they're not coming in with a ton of ownership, 0.6%. Obviously, a low top 2 stack percentage, such as the nature of the beast when you play for the Arizona Coyotes. But it's a Toronto power play stack I like best in this game.
I am a bit confused why Toronto is going to be carrying 3 goalies. Like, is Woll actually healthy, or are they concerned they're going to lose Marty Jones on waivers?
I think that's kind of the problem. Is like if Woll gets hurt and you send Jones down, like I don't think Jones would get claimed, but you never know. If he does, then you're kind of screwed, right? Like, whatever. Who cares?
Yeah. Pierre Engvall cares. Buffalo Sabres with a 2.9 total. Heading into Tampa Bay, the Lightning have a 3.5 total. This game drives me nuts. Because on the one side, you have Tampa 1, 22.5, more expensive than a lot of the top lines besides Colorado 1. In a very good matchup, Brandon Hagel isn't on the top power play. It is a pretty good power play matchup. On the flip side, like Buffalo 1, all I can think about is, man, if this line reaches potential, 18.7 is so cheap. And Tampa isn't very good defensively. Like, how many times can I take Buffalo 1? What's the definition of insanity? Because they're coming in with positive leverage, 4.4% top 2 stack percentage, 1% ownership. Fully correlated. The workload that Vasilevsky's gotten after back surgery in your 30s is insane to me. Insane. Now, Buffalo 1 has not reached their potential this year. Skinner hasn't looked great. They've been injured. But for 18.7, 2.9 total, I'm taking a stab at that ownership at 18.7. If you don't want to hop on the bandwagon, I completely understand. They've burnt it down numerous times. We've rebuilt the bandwagon. We had to find, some. It's just bad. But at that price, at that ownership, for their ceiling, we've seen their ceiling, what it is. Like, Tage Thompson scored, 64 DK points in the first period of a game last season? Or something ridiculous like that? I'm not saying that's what's going to happen, but this line at that price, they can get you bonuses. I'm going to take a stab at 1%. Now, Tampa 1, I really, really like, but at 22.5, it's hard to say. Like, I'd rather play Minnesota 1. I'd rather play Florida 1 for 700 less. You know what I mean? So, like, it's going to be hard for me to prioritize Tampa 1 here, despite Buffalo's issues in single entry. But I think in MME, they're a very, very good play. Now, the depth of Tampa, like a Stamkos one-off is fine. A Cirelli one-off is, I guess, fine. But, like, these lines in the depth are just brutal. So it's Tampa Bay 1 or bust for me on Tampa side. I guess you could power play stack, leave off Hagel, add in Stamkos, something like that. But I'm going to take a stab on Buffalo, and I can already feel the pain.
Yeah, I'm not going to say don't play Buffalo's top line, because you're right. At 1% ownership, like, that is hard to ignore. For as much as they've let us down this year, 1% ownership for that top line. 2.9 expected goals per 60 in their time together this season. Like, that's not bad. It's above league average. It's certainly not elite or anything, but it's not bad. They're not finishing. I've talked about this before on shows, weeks ago. But Buffalo was a team that played a lot off the rush last year. They forced turnovers, got forwards up the ice, et cetera, et cetera. They completely abandoned that this year. It's made them a much better defensive team, and they're actually a better 5-on-5 team because of it, but it's just nuked their scoring, and it's nuked their transition offense. So, in general, I think this is a fair price for the way that they're playing now. But at 1% ownership, I certainly, and with the way Tampa's defended, which is poorly for a long time now, like, they just have too many injuries on the blue line. I don't have a real problem playing them, but I just talked about that Islanders top line. It's only $800 more expensive. I know they're coming in 8% ownership or whatever, but on a 12-game slate, like, I really don't care that much. I would probably still rather play the Islanders in that price range, but I think Buffalo's fine. The interesting thing is what to do with Tampa Bay, because, like I said, Buffalo's, the way that they played is trying to get better defensively. And the line of Tuck, Skinner, and Thompson, 2.3 expected goals against per 60 this season, 2.2 actual goals against. Those are numbers you'd see from a Carolina line. Like that is actually really good defense. You know, they got Owen Power back. It was the last game or the game before. You know, the Buffalo second line, Cousins, Middlestat, Greenway, not doing anything offensively, which I don't think is a shock when you see the names on that line. Like, I like Dylan Cousins a lot. I like Casey Middlestat a lot. I don't think they complement each other whatsoever. And Jordan Greenway is not a guy that's going to fill the net. So, like, this is not going to be a good offensive line. But 2.3 expected goals against, 1.8 actual goals against. Like, this is a good defensive top six for Buffalo. That's what worries me from the Tampa Bay perspective. Obviously, Tampa Bay's top line can get there both at 5-on-5 and the power play. Hagel not on the power play. It's not that big of a deal. Brandon Hagel is absolutely tearing apart the opposition. Like we talked about the last game, he had 28 points in 21 games or something like that. And I think only like 4 of them were on the power play or 3 of them, and they're all in the second unit. So he doesn't need the power play to get there. It is a good power play matchup. Buffalo's penalty kill, eighth most shots against on the PK. Over the last 8 weeks, 3.8 minor penalties taken per game. That's well above the league average. So it is a good power play matchup. I don't mind playing Tampa 1 here, but there are a handful of expensive lines on this slate. We've already talked about Florida. Like, would you Tampa 1 at 5% or Florida 1 at 7 to 8%? I'd rather play Florida, and it's not even close. So, like, while I think Tampa is perfectly fine to play, and I would definitely have them in my mix if I was 150 maxing, I just think there are other lines I'd rather play elsewhere in that price range.
Agreed. Winnipeg Jets, they 2.6 total. Heading into Dallas, the Stars have a 2.9 total. Second 5.5 on the night. Kind of surprised how low Winnipeg's totals is. Like, I know going into Dallas isn't ideal, but like they haven't been great defensively with these lines. So like, I don't think I'm going to prioritize them in single entry by any means, but I think Winnipeg 1 at 0.4% ownership is perfectly fine here. Like the Pavelski line with Hintz and Robertson has been their best defensive line in these alignments, and they've been league average. And then you have Johnston, Ben, who have been pretty bad defensively. Duchesne, Marchment, Sam Steele, not very good defensively. So like, I don't know. Like, I'm fine with Winnipeg 1, not going to prioritize them. On the flip side, again, like, just not great matchups. If anything, I'm going back to Stanky Leg. You know what I mean? A little Dallas 3 action, but like, playing Winnipeg is not fun anymore. It's just not. Like, they're a good defensive team. So, like, this game is completely MME for me. Like, I think if you want to do like a Stankov and one off for salary relief in your single entry, it's fine. But like, I'm not looking to stack anything in single entry from this game.
Yeah, I'll just say I don't have any interest in the Dallas side other than that Johnston, Ben, Logan Stankoven line. Pretty good return, a very small sample. Wyatt and Logan, 35 minutes, 73 shot attempts per 60. They've outplayed the opposition in their minutes together. It's kind of the rest of the lineup that just hasn't been very good. I'll also mention the 3 games that Dallas played, or that Stankoven has played in Carolina at home versus the Islanders, which the Islanders have been a lot better defensively under Patrick Roy, and then in Colorado. Those are not easy matchups for a rookie coming into the NHL. And, I did a write-up for him about him at a different website, and I just watched all his shifts from the Carolina game, which is the game he didn't have any points. Like, this guy, he's very aware of everything that's going on in the ice. He knows where players are and where they're going. He knows where he needs to be, et cetera, et cetera. It's like, aside from all the skill he has, and he has a lot of skill, especially he's a very good shooter. He's just a very smart player. And I think that's something that'll play very well with Wyatt Johnston. And I think you've seen that in a small sample. I'm not super worried about Winnipeg's depth matchups. I don't mind them as a filler stack here. I think I kind of agree with you that Winnipeg 1 is the best, probably the line that I'd have the most interest in here. So Connor, Scheifele, Velarde, like, they're cooking a little bit hot, over 14%.
but there just aren't any matchups on the Dallas side that I'm worried about. The Dallas penalty kill is not very good. Winnipeg's power play. They talk about how Sean Monahan has helped the Winnipeg's power play, and he has. It's Gabriel Velarde, right? Like if you look at the numbers with Gabriel Velarde in there, 13.8 goals per 60 minutes, and it's been basically identical numbers with and without Monahan. So him being healthy, I think, has been the big difference maker for them. So honestly, Winnipeg 1, favorite line in this game. I think Dallas 3 is fine as a filler.
King Bacon almost got a little excited there. He heard a friend that he wanted to introduce himself to. Minnesota Wild with a 3 total heading into Nashville. The Predators have a 3.1. This is another one of those sneaky games. It's kind of like Islanders Detroit. Pretty good power play matchup on both sides. Minnesota won 22,000 the full stack. That's expensive, but they've been excellent. And this is a very good power play spot. You're going to get Nashville 1 at 5-on-5. Their numbers have been sliding a little bit. You know what I mean? But that line, Eriksson, Kaprizov, Boldy, they get the minutes too, which is odd for John Hines' team, right? Usually he spreads it out. These guys are playing.
I mean, they want to make playoffs really, really bad. I think that's why, but no, normally you don't see that.
Yeah. So, yeah, I do really like Minnesota 1 here. 6.2% ownership. Now, are they a better play than Florida tonight? Probably not. Florida's just in one of those excellent matchups, but like you shouldn't just throw Minnesota under the rug because you want to play Florida. You know what I mean? You definitely got to consider them. They've been excellent. On the flip side, Forsberg, O'Reilly, Nyquist have been very, very good. They're coming in at 3% owned, 18,700, same price as that Buffalo top line. I'd rather play Nashville 1 than Buffalo 1. Gustav Nyquist having a resurgent season. I think thank you, Phil Forsberg. Forsberg's having an unreal season. They're fully correlated. Now, Minnesota's penalty kill has been improving since Hines got there, but the Nashville power play has been very, very good. So I'm in on both top lines here. As far as the depth on either side, like a one-off Zuccarello is fine, a one-off Tommy Novak or one-off Cody Glass is fine, but I don't think I'll be stacking any of the depth lines.
Yeah, Philip Forsberg got the combo meal in the last game. A block shot bonus from Philip Forsberg. I mean, God bless him for doing that. You certainly appreciate it. Nashville top line, their last 15 games, 2.9 expected goals for, 3.3 against. They're creating pretty well offensively. Defensively, not. What saved them is UC Saros. 967 save percentage behind them in those 15 games. Eventually, that's got to turn around. That's one of the reasons why I kind of agree with you on Minnesota 1. Like that regression is going to hit the top line hard one of these games eventually. Whether you want to, bank your single entry on it, I think that's up to you. But that line has been absolutely tremendous. I try to, when lines stick together for a while, I try to see how they're rolling along a little bit. So I was looking just since January 1st, which would be about half their sample. Minnesota top line in that, even just in half their sample, 4 expected goals, 7 actual goals per 60 minutes. The 7 actual goals is shooting 16.5%, which is riding way too hot. The thing is that they're creating so much offense is that even if they're shooting 10%, they'd still be at 4.2 goals per 60 minutes, which is an elite number. This has just been one of the best offensive lines in the league for basically 2.5 months now, whenever they've been together, because they haven't always been together. They've tried, Rossi on the top line at times, Hartman on the top line, etc. But when they've been together, they've been one of the best offensive lines in the league. And they're drawing a lot of power play opportunities. I think that's a big part of it too, right? If you look over the last 8 weeks, the only team drawing more minor penalties per game than Florida is Minnesota, and Minnesota is like just behind them. It's basically a rounding error. So I agree. I think Minnesota 1 is my favorite line in this game. Even in factoring in the fact that they're a lot more expensive than Nashville. They've just been so dominant, creating so many shots. They get so many power plays. Saros has been really good for the most part this season. He's had some bad games.
And that first line is eventually going to give it up defensively. So I really like Minnesota 1. They're not coming in with a whole lot of ownership, 6.2%, which I think is a little bit high for a $22,000 line that's on the road. But you see Minnesota with a 3 total, and it's kind of like the Islanders that we talked about. It's like if Minnesota gets to 5 goals here tonight, I don't think it's because Vinny Lettieri has a hat trick. You know what I mean? I'm asking for it. Yeah, I know. It's Minnesota 1 I like best in this game. I think Nashville is perfectly fine. So one of their beat writers talk about they're wondering if Forsberg's kind of playing through a nagging injury. He's missing some practices. You know, the defensive numbers for the line have really fallen off. Maybe there is something going on. Don't know for sure. I'll just take the line that's been playing extremely well, and that's Minnesota 1.
Yeah, they've been great. I will be doing a UFC Quick Picks video later tonight, assuming my voice holds up. I'll be, as soon as NHL locks, I will be recording. It should be up on my Twitter by 8 p.m. Eastern. We have MMA Sims. This card is a bit funky. The pricing on this card is tough. There's not much mid-range, so leaving salary on the table could be important. And you can do that with the Sims, no problem. So check out the link in the chat. Sign up for those MMA Sims. Check out my video. Thank you for the support. Whether it's MMA, whether it's NBA, whether it's NHL, whether it's BetPro, whether it's, esports. I don't think we've gotten any esports signups yet, but what's wrong with you guys? You don't want to be up at 4 a.m. watching YouTube, watching some League of Legends? That shit was awesome during COVID. If you want to hear some good announcers, League of Legends announcers are better than any American sports announcers. It is a fact.
It's true.
Not close. Anyway. I could go on, but we have 4 more games to get through. Thank you for your support. Colorado Avalanche with a 3.9 total. Heading into Chicago. Blackhawks have a 2.5 total. Okay. Like we had that pretty big discussion about Colorado on the last show. You had concerns. My concerns are a little bit eased because they play like half the game. It's kind of the same thing here tonight. They're in one of, which is like, it's almost unbelievable that I actually am going to say this. Like, they're in one of the tougher 5-on-5 matchups they've had recently, which is insane to say. But Dickinson, Blackwell, Joey Anderson have legit been a good line, as my internet decides to do some things. But it's not the greatest power play matchup either. Chicago has a pretty decent penalty kill. Now, Colorado won completely and utterly matchup proof, right? But when you factor in 14% ownership here, like, I'd rather play Florida 1. I'd rather play Minnesota 1. Because not only are you going to be contending with 14% Colorado 1, you then have to find an even cheaper line than you would use with Florida 1 or Minnesota 1 to do something. You know what I mean? Like, getting Colorado to do stuff is the easy part. Finding that cheap secondary stack to do stuff on top of it is the hard part. So, like, I think I'd rather take the salary savings from Florida 1 or Minnesota 1 or even cheaper and go like Islanders or Detroit or something like that. Now, Colorado 1, perfectly fine. Don't get me wrong. This is just a tough 5-on-5 matchup. It's not the best power play matchup. Now, Colorado power play can melt anybody, so it doesn't really matter. But I'm just giving you the devil's advocate on Colorado 1 because I've run out of things to say about them. You could just play them, and you just go about your day. Now, the interesting thing is honestly the Bedard line. Because he's with Beauvillier and Kurashev. Thank the Lord he is no longer with Nick Foligno. These guys can kind of skate compared to Nick Foligno, but like the depth of Colorado without Nichushkin, without all their guys healthy, is a bit suspect. So like I think the Bedard line at 14-2 is a nice little sneaky filler line, if you want to call them a filler line. They're a top line. They're 14-5. Colorado takes a ton of penalties. Correlated on the power play. I don't know if Beauvillier is on the top power play, but I know Kurashev is. I think this is a sneaky good spot for Chicago 1.
So on the season, the Jason Dickinson line is sitting at 1.8 expected goals against per 60, 1.6 actual goals against per 60. So it's not that they're just limiting what the opposition creates. They're not getting scored on either. Those numbers are what you would, those numbers are literally what you would see when the Jordan Staal line is at its best in Carolina. And this is the Chicago Blackhawks checking line doing this. And the thing is like, it's been almost no matter the combination, like as long as Dickinson and Joey Anderson are together, it doesn't matter who the third winger has been. They've been excellent defensively. Like if you look at the expected goals against numbers relative to the rest of the team, Jason Dickinson is up there with literally the Carolina third line guys. Like he's in the top set or in the top 10 with Jordan Staal, with Jordan Martinook. Like that's how good this line has been defensively this season. And that's one of the reasons why I don't have a ton of interest in Colorado 1 here. Like that line's going to be out there. And it's not just the line either. Part of it is Alex Vlasic. Like he's not going to get, any hype for Rookie of the Year. Like I think he has like 12 points. Like you're not going to get that for Rookie of the Year. I don't even think he's eligible because he played 6 games last season. Anyways, his defensive metrics are really, really, really good this season. So it's a tough matchup for the forward, but with the forward line, it's a tough matchup defensively. Chicago doesn't take a lot of penalties. Chicago's only at 2.9 minor penalties taken per game over the last 8 weeks. It's the third fewest in the league. Only Vegas and Seattle have taken less. And it's a good penalty kill on top of that. Like, I'm never going to say don't play Colorado 1. Like you said, they're matchup proof. You can play them literally whenever you want. 24K on the road in what is a tough defensive matchup, generally speaking, against a team that doesn't draw a lot of penalties when it's a 12-game slate and there are a lot of expensive lines on the board that you can play: Minnesota, Tampa Bay, Florida, Toronto, Boston, whatever. I just think there are reasons not to play Colorado here. I'd honestly rather play the Colorado second line. They're going to come in over-leveraged or whatever, but, Colton Wood and O'Connor, since January 1st, 3.5 expected goals for, 3.6 actual goals for. They're going to get much, much, much better matchups at 5-on-5. I think I'd prefer filler stacking from the Avs tonight than top line stacking. Agree on Chicago 1. I think of what I like best is just a Connor Bedard one-off. He'll get the second and third line matchups, particularly the second line against Colorado. Colorado's been taking a lot of penalties, 3.7 minor penalties taken per game against the league average of 3.5. I mentioned this in the article about Connor Bedard as well. Nick Foligno has been kind of like the Gabriel Velarde for Chicago on the power play. Like, I don't want to go that far, but they're over 10 goals per 60 minutes in over 60 minutes together with Nick Foligno on the top power play. He's made a difference. I don't mind a Connor Bedard one-off at all here, but I think it's actually the Colorado second line that I like better than the top line tonight. I'd rather use them as a filler.
Yeah, and like people are going to see, the Avs minus 300, great matchup. This is the 10th game of the month for the Blackhawks. Half of them, well, actually 55%, because 5 of the 9 games this month have been 1-goal games. They do not. I'm going to jinx myself, but they haven't been getting blown out. They lost by 3 goals to Carolina on the road, but like they've generally been in close games, and it's because of that Dickinson line. They're excellent.
I mean, they played Edmonton 3 times. Edmonton only scored 9 goals in the 3 games, and they've only played once in Chicago. Draisaitl had a goal. McDavid had a goal. Nobody had 5 shots. They only scored twice. Like, this is a very good defensive line. Like, that's just all that's all we could say.
I mean, they're actually a decently defensive team, like as a whole. You know what I mean? They're not like the Sharks where they're just completely putrid. They just can't fucking score. That's the problem. Anyway. Pittsburgh Penguins, speaking of teams who can't score, 2.9 total heading into Seattle. The Kraken have a 3 total. This is one of those games where, Cliffy said, don't really have to pay attention to some of these games. If I didn't know this game existed, would I care? No. Like Pitt 2 coming in at 5.2% projected ownership. Like, why? Malkin, O'Connor, Pustainen. Like, I know Valtteri Pustein is on the top power play unit, but that top power play unit is, frankly, fucking sucks. And Seattle's penalty kill is very good. Seattle's a very good defensive team. You want to play Crosby, Raquel Smith? They're 16-1. Get to them in your MME portfolio. Good luck, soldier. I don't love this game. You want to play McCann, Eberle, Beniers at 13-9 as a filler? Go for it. This game, I don't have much interest at all in anything in 1 to 3. In MME, Pitt 1, Seattle 1, go get yourself a couple percent in your portfolio. I think that's fine. But 1 to 3, this game is just not a priority for me.
Yeah, next game.
Amazing. Los Angeles Kings with a 2.8 total. Heading into Vancouver, the Canucks have a 3.3. The Kings, man. Our Kings are a mess. I just, like, I don't know. I'm a broken record with the Vancouver Canucks. Like, I'm going to play JT Miller, Brock Besser, Pius Suter, and now they're fully correlated on the power play. And the Kings' penalty kill has been running so hot. That Hansel is so hot right now. Hansel. It's unsustainable. And no one ever plays the Miller, Besser, Suter line. They're 0.8% projected. They're under 17K. They play most of their time with at least one of Hronek or Hughes. Hronek's on that unit. I like Vancouver Miller line. On the Kings side, it would be going back to Fiala more Danault. Like, eventually they're going to start scoring. They're creating an absolute Brinks truckload. They're just not unloading the truck. Eventually that's going to happen. I don't know if it's going to be tonight because I really like Thatcher Demko, and I think Vancouver's a pretty good defensive team, but like this line at 15-6, for the amount they create, I want to get ahead of the field and get them at low ownership because eventually they're going to break a slate.
Yeah, they are. I don't think it's going to be tonight, but I will say they play at home on Sunday to New Jersey. So just going to throw that out there.
When you can win a Wendy's Frosty gift certificate for first place.
Yeah, I don't have a lot of interest in the Kings tonight. Like you said, if you want to go play more Danault, Fiala, that's just fine. Alex Turcotte's going to be on the top line for Los Angeles, it looks like. That makes LA1 pretty cheap. So, I guess you can go in that direction, but it also makes LA1 a double center. And it's like, do you want to, with the way the Kings are playing, do you want to double center stack the top line? I just pass.
I like Turcotte, but ugh.
Yeah. I mean, he's 2,500. I think he makes a good one-off. You know what I mean? Like, just put him in as 2,500 one-off, and then make the rest of your lineup 3-2-1 or something. But stacking, no. Miller, Suter, and Besser, I can't get over how good this line is.
Yeah, no one plays them ever.
3.6 expected goals for, 1.4 against, 39 shot attempts against, and they're up to almost 150 minutes together, which, like 12, 13 games? Like, it's really not that small of a sample. All on the same power play unit now that they split up the units. Like, the Kings don't take a ton of penalties. They're at 3.7. So, I think there's maybe a little bit of power play value there, but they're not that expensive. I think that's kind of the biggest point here is that with Suter there, they're not that expensive as a line. 16,700, 0.8% ownership. Kings goaltending has not been good for basically since December. I think there's Miller, Besser, and Suter seems kind of fine here. I know they're going to go out against Kopitar and Byfield. It's not the matchup that you want to go into. Maybe Turcotte drags them down, and you don't really need a lot of shots the way the Kings goaltending has been playing anyway. So I kind of like Miller, Besser, Suter there in the mid-price range. Again, LA2 is fine, but I think it's the Vancouver side I prefer here.
Yeah, let's get to – I don't even know what to call this game. The Butt Cheek Bowl. Anaheim Ducks with a 3.1 total heading into San Jose. The Sharks have a 2.9. This game has a 6 over under. The Ducks have a 3.1. That's been their high. We've been touting the Ducks since COVID. I don't think they've ever had a 3.1 total. And
Probably the last time they played San Jose.
yeah, probably. And Troy Terry's out. So, like, do I want to play a 7% line with Brett Leeson on it? Like, yeah, maybe he'll turn into a nice middle six player at some point. Do I want to play 8.4% Leo Carlson? Couldn't finish at Spearmint Rhino. Like, do I want to play a 11% Michael Granlund, an 11% William Eklund? Like, no. But there's going to be goals in this game because the Ducks are atrocious. And the Sharks are the worst team since the 2013 Buffalo Sabres. They're arguably worse. So, like, what do you even do here, right? Like, I like Zetterlund. I like Eklund, but, like, they're not playing together. Granlund, Zetterlund, Duclair, I guess they're fine, but, like, that much negative leverage on a 12,600 line, like, I just can't do it. Yeah, Henrique, are they playing Henrique? Yes, he's on the Carlson line with Killorn. Like, Henrique is going to score a shorthanded goal. Like I said that in our Discord. Like, this game's going to be so ugly, but it's going to be DFS relevant. So you have to consider both top six lines in this game, and I just don't want to. And I don't even know what I would do. I'd probably, if I had to pick a line in this game, it would be Vetrano, McTavish, Leeson. Like, at least Vetrano has a history of scoring goals. McTavish has a history of scoring goals. Brett Leeson is a guy right now, right? And you guys can make fun of me in Discord when he scores. You'd be like, hey, the guy just scored. But Anaheim, two of all the top six lines in this game, they're coming in with the lowest ownership. They're all negative leverage. But, like, if you could give me McTavish, Vetrano in this matchup with the least negative leverage, I'm going to take it and run. If you want to play the Sharks, go for it. I cannot consciously put that amount of ownership on the Sharks and put them into my lineup. I'm sorry. I just can't do it.
Yeah, I wrote up the Sharks talk line because I felt like I had to write about this game in my article. But, like, what else are you going to do? The one thing I mentioned is that of all the lines priced under 13K, the Sharks top line has the highest top two percentage, and it's not even close. That's the one thing that kind of worries me. It is a 2.9 total for them. The top line for the Sharks has actually been passable, which is honestly amazing for this team. But 2.4 expected goals, 2.8 actual goals per 60 at 5-on-5. It's actually above league average, which it feels like a miracle. Now, the rest of the team is atrocious, but at least they're doing something. What worries me is that the Leo Carlson line has actually not been that bad defensively. Leo Carlson's been pretty good defensively himself, but Anaheim just takes so many penalties, 4.2 minor penalties taken per game over the last 8 weeks. Now, the San Jose power play, I don't know why they're putting Mike Hoffman on for a defenseman. That just feels like not smart coaching.
Yeah.
But the San Jose top line, like, they'll get the minutes. There's going to be a ton of ownership. So if you want to play them, you have to deal with that. But, there are a lot of low-owned stacks that we talked about today with a lot of positive leverage that can hopefully balance that out. But I think I kind of agree with your McTavish Vetrano, just because they're going to miss that Granlund line and, like, the rest of the Sharks lineup, like, holy mother of God, like, it is bad. The Sharks second line is at 4, like, Cunnin and Zadina is at 4, literally 4.9 expected goals against per 60 minutes. You'll see penalty kills with that mark. It's just honestly brutal. Doesn't get a whole lot better the deeper you go. So I kind of agree with you on Anaheim too. They are coming in reasonable ownership, 7%. Don't want to play Brett Leeson, but I've won tournaments with worse players. I just think them and San Jose, one of the two lines that I think are in play here, particularly because at least the San Jose top line has a good sample of actually producing above average offense, which, considering the teams involved here, is nothing short of a miracle. So San Jose 1, Anaheim 2 for me. I really wish this game wasn't on this slate.
Yeah. I mean, it is California, so maybe, there'll be a sinkhole or something, and no one gets hurt, but the stadium won't be accessible. Well, you can pray. Lots of NBA coming up after us. I forgot to write down when it is, but the NBA Deeper Dive, NBA Live Before Lock, and then they have that show on Playback, which is actually pretty sweet. Like, Playback is pretty cool. They watch the games, they talk about their lineups, late swaps, and all that kind of stuff. So, former ISU Iowa State caddy is going to be a special guest on the Playback show. That's Eric Winquist. What a guy. So, yeah, stay tuned for that. Let's talk a little bit about defensemen. Eric was in New Jersey. Visited Greg. Didn't visit me. I won't forget. Talk about defensemen. Cale Makar, Roman Josi, Rasmus Dahlin, Noah Dobson. 7 to 8K range. I think Noah Dobson, excellent spot here tonight. I think Yossi's fine as well. But if you are going to use these expensive lines, like, you're just not going to be able to fit these guys in. I think for that reason, I think going mid-range and getting like some of these expensive guys, it would be an interesting way to get a little bit different on the slate. I think all those guys are fine. I think Makar and Dobson, Dobson would be my favorite. Who else you liking?
Yeah, Dahlin, Makar, Dobson are my 1, 2, 3 here tonight. Dahlin's just playing so many minutes and so many peripherals. It's hard to ignore. Wrote up Victor Hedman. He's been playing he's had some pretty big minute games with all the injuries. Not a bad power play spot for Tampa Bay. Going obviously Brandon Montour, the heaters he's on with the power play matchup. Both him and Aaron Ekblad are definitely in play in this game. Wrote up Philip Hronik. Like, with the power play time is something. I don't know how much the power play time is actually worth against LA and with the split units for Vancouver, but it's worth something. Mo Cedar for Detroit. The power play unit's not been bad. Fast-paced matchup could be against the Islanders. Don't mind him here. Wrote up Cam Fowler in the picks article. Like, there's going to be some stupid defenseman that goes off in that Anaheim San Jose game. You just got to hope that you pick the right one. For that reason, I also have Pavel Mintyukov rated highly in this game. So, like, it's the way it is. Adam Larson for Seattle, not a bad matchup for block shots. JJ Moser, Arizona, same reason. Esa Lindell, Dallas, same reason. Adam Pelech for the Islanders. He's been getting 20 to 21 minutes of late. That's good enough at his price. Brandon Carlo, 22-plus minutes a night for Boston with their injuries. Not bad against Vegas. There are a couple cheap Florida Panthers defensemen, Mikkola and Kulikov. If you need a sub-3K guy, not really a bad matchup for it against Montreal. Could maybe get you a cheap point or something like that. So Mikkola and Kulikov if you need guys under 3K.
Yeah, the other one I mentioned, you mentioned him earlier, is Alex Vlasic. Like, he's 3,300, been playing 24, 25 minutes. You need a min-price guy as well. Nils Lundqvist back in the lineup. Chris Tanev is not going to be playing for Dallas tonight because of visa issues. So just a couple other guys here. Let's talk a little bit about the goalies now, shall we? Stellars, Justice Anuin at the top of the board. I think if I'm going to spend up, it would be for Swayman or Pyotr Kochetkov, honestly, for cash games. I just, I don't live in this range. I like Demcode 8K, obviously. The Anaheim goalie is 7,900 tonight. I think that's fine. Like, it's not how you leverage not playing the Sharks, but, like, you're going to get the Anaheim goalie for a little bit lower ownership, whatever that means to you. I don't really care about goalie ownership. I care about goalie points, but if you like the Ducks goaltender, you can use it. Saros and Gustafsson are a little bit interesting because it's a tough power play matchup for both. Like, it's a good power play matchup for both sides, so you'd expect to see some volume. I kind of lean toward Gustafsson there. He's a little bit cheaper. Sorokin, 7,500, obviously. I think Hellebuck's the one that sticks out at 7,400. I don't even mind Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen. He's been very, very good. And then Peter Mrazek, 7K. And Sam Montembeault, 6,900. If you really need the salary savings, they're both going to see the volume. You just got to hope that they don't give up 6 or get pulled before they hit the saves bonus.
It's a lot to ask. I wrote up Thatcher Demko. Los Angeles has just not been scoring at 5-on-5. The way Vancouver's been taking penalties is a little bit concerning, but with no Adrian Kempe, I think it's not a bad night for Demko. Don't think it's a bad night for expensive goalies in general. Like I did write up Thatcher Demko. Jeremy Swayman starting for Boston. He might see a fair bit of shots, even against a weakened Vegas lineup. Didn't write up, but I like Alex Lyon here again tonight. Detroit just gives up a lot of shots, and the Islanders do take their fair share. So I think between Swayman, Demko, and Alex Lyon, it's not a bad night for more expensive goalies. Connor Ingram for cheap. Connor Hellebuck, anytime he's relatively cheap on the road, always take him. And I'll throw in Philip Grubauer for Seattle. I actually don't mind either goalie in that Pittsburgh-Seattle game because I don't think there's going to be a lot of goals. But Philip Grubauer, he's the home goalie, 7,600. Pittsburgh can generate shots, so don't mind him at 76.
Yeah, and again, if you have a goalie you like, you play him. Like we do the best that we can with the goalie. It's just like they're just mythical creatures.
Yeah,
they're just hard to project. They're hard to, it's like starting pitcher 2 for MLB, which is coming up. Who you like for your hat trick pick? I need to shut up.
I think Arizona gets the job done against the Leafs tonight. I'm going to go Lawson Krause.
Nothing is better than watching the Leafs crash and burn. I know I said I preferred Detroit, but I'm picking an Islander. I'm going Brock Nelson.
Fair enough.
Cliffy's client.
Yep.
We will be back on Saturday. Today's Thursday, right? Yeah, we'll be back on Saturday. Big slate. Tomorrow there's only 2 or 3 games, but we'll be back on Saturday. Appreciate the support, you guys. If you want to go premium, click that link in the chat. We'll see you in Discord. We'll see you on Twitter. Thank you for tuning in, and good luck, everybody.
Good luck tonight, everyone.